Dave Armstrong, welcome to the Marketing for Business podcast.
Thank you very much.
Mate, it's great to have you here. Hey, look, we've known each other for a while. I think we met when you were at the BNZ.
Yep.
And what were you doing there?
Business banking, basically.
Business banking. Now, your accent tells a different story. So where originally is your lineage from?
So I'm from North Highlands of Scotland.
Highlands of Scotland?
Yeah. So it's a wee town in the the very north of Scotland called Wick, which comes from the Viking word Vic, which means the bay, because we were basically invaded by the Vikings, hence the blonde hair, blue eyes, and red meat and good beer. So.
And whiskey.
And whiskey, yeah.
What's your favourite whiskey?
I get asked that every time. I don't really have a favourite. The one that's...
You like them all?
Well, there's some that I'm not a fan of, but I think the one that's most... whiskey's about selling a story half the time, right?
Yeah,
I used to sell whiskey for a living, and the one I always sold the most of was the one from my hometown, because I grew up down the road from the distillery. Yeah. So I was able to sell it by the case almost.
What was it?
Old Pulteney.
Oh yes. Yeah.
So it's the one that's got the fishing boat, because my hometown was the busiest fishing port in Europe at one point.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So the silver and gold came from Wick. The silver was the fish, and the gold was the whiskey.
Nice.
So, we called them the silver darlings. That was the fish that was caught, but we overfished it, and so there's no more fishing.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Is the whiskey still there?
Yep, whiskey opened back up in the 1990s, the 21-year-old, about 9-10 years ago, won the best whiskey in the world.
Really?
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's good.
So what's it? Old Putney?
Old Pulteney, yeah.
Pulteney.
So Pulteney Town is a part of Wick.
Yep.
So there's Wick and Pulteney Town. Pulteney Town is kind of like the newer. It's kind of like the Rolleston, right? It's kind of the newer one that came along.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And so what do you like about it? Just the story, or is it actually a good whiskey?
It is a good whiskey. So it's a nice, sweet, easy going whiskey. So if you're new to whiskey, it's a great one. Because it's got that little bit of a sweeter, easier one.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I grew up down the road from it. It's my hometown. Lineage. So it's kind of. I've met the distillery master, and I've got some fond memories being there at 10 o'clock in the morning, which won't go into today.
What did you learn selling whiskey?
What did I learn selling whiskey?
Yeah.
It's a story, right? So the product is good, but it was the story that because I used to go into so much detail, like this whiskey's got this flavor profile and it's made from, but people were just getting a bit confused with it. Then when I started telling the story of the place that it came from, and New Zealand's quite a good place to sell whiskey, because there's especially the South Island, there's a very strong linkage back to Scotland.
Yes.
So all I would do is go, okay, what's your surname? Ah, right, you come from the Lowlands, Achentoshan. Or you could go, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Spain. Right, well, this was the whiskey of your region, for example.
That's good, right?
And it didn't matter what it tasted like. They were just, that's my whiskey. That's my whiskey.
Perfect. So you're telling a story and getting people to own indirectly their
making it personable. It was there because for them that was the special thing about it, because it's a special. You buy a bottle of whiskey, it's more special than buying a bottle of wine. It's more special than buying a case of beer. And there's something about it that most whiskies are 12 years old. So there's something about it. You think it took 12 years to make that. It's quite a special, and the whole process that goes into it, and the people and the place it came from, and that it can link back to the lineage. And I think also as it's going to be the whiskey podcast after this.
I was going to say, we could stop the marketing right now.
We're just to talk about whiskey, So whiskey's like a time capsule as well. So as soon as you take it out of the wood and put it into a bottle, it stops aging. Whereas wine continues to age, whiskey doesn't. So like I always remember one of my favourite tastings was we somehow got this bottle. It was just a cheap blend from 1944.
Oh wow!
And so we opened it as our appetizer, I guess, and it was an average whiskey, but it was cool because I was thinking about it, and I was like, this is what the guys in the trenches would have been drinking in 1944, and it's no different what it was in 1944.
Yeah, that's so cool, right?
Yeah, so that's kind of the when you realise that, and you sort of go, actually, I'm drinking something that was made, 50 plus years ago. And
the flavour of it will still be the same.
Exact same whiskey that they were drinking in the trenches.
Oh wow!
So it's that's how you used to sell it, as the story.
Yeah. So. Because I want to go out and buy that whiskey now.
You do? I can't remember the name of it, unfortunately.
I want to buy the one from your own hometown. Right?
Yeah.
I love it when people give you whiskey too. I've been getting some amazing whiskies over the years, and some of them, just beautiful tasting, and from a person that didn't like whiskey to liking whiskey. It was a real cool journey. One thing you could stop the podcast here with regards to marketing, because the key to good marketing also is telling a story, right? And letting people in and letting people believe. Loads of businesses don't do that, right? They're trying to sell their features. They're trying to sell all about them versus, focusing on, hey, what's in it for the person? Or how are you going to get them to relate to what you have and what you offer them, right?
Yep.
So hey, great start to the podcast. There'll be more gems coming up.
The Whisky podcast. Coming this year.
Yeah. Hey, so corporate world, right? So you where were you working with Whisky? You were was that down at Whisky Galore? Were you selling there? Yeah,
that's
nice.
it.
Nice. So then you decide to get into banking.
Yep.
And completely different, right? From now you move into the corporate world, right? And was that always a projection for you? Is that where you wanted to go to? Or you fell into that? No.
No. So my life completely turned when I met my wife. So obviously Scotland.
Yep.
My goal in my entire life when I was in high school was to be a police officer. That's what I always wanted to be. I wanted to be a detective. That was, my dream.
Scotland Yard?
Something like that. That's in London, but ironically. But met this beautiful Kiwi girl. Chased her to the other side of the world. Kind of changes your plans because you have to go through this whole residency process. And so that's why I decided to sell whiskey when I came over here, because I was like, well, I need to do something while I'm going through this process. And so, I like whiskey, and there was by chance whiskey shop, and it turns out that the owner of the whiskey shop was friends with my wife's uncle, and it's Christchurch, right?
Yeah, totally.
So, I did that, and then once my residency came through, I absolutely loved that job. I still refer to it as my best job I've ever had. But ultimately, it was like,
why did you like that job though? Why was it?
Oh, it was just the people and the culture, and it was fun, right? It was a fun job, and it was something you were passionate about.
Yeah, I worked for Bond & Bond, which I'm dating myself, which is like Noel Leemings, right?
Yeah,
and they have now. But I really loved that job. I turned up. I was selling TVs, washing machines and stuff, but it was the people, right? It was really cool. Retail, being around people, everything was new every day, right? That's cool.
But then it came to the point where it was like, I got my residency, I wanted to marry this girl, and we wanted to have a family and all this kind of stuff. So it was like, right, I need to, I needed to do something that I could, and I don't have a degree or any apprenticeship or anything like that. So it was like, right, I need to do something that I can progress and go up the corporate ladder. And so I went home one day and said to my wife, I'm going to be a banker. And so I did it. So I started off...
And the thoughts there was like you needed to progress, and
I did a brief stint in recruitment after the whiskey shop, and my client was Westpac.
Oh, wow.
And it was purely, I went, I'm not enjoying this recruitment stuff, but... these bankers get paid all right.
Yeah. And did you like numbers and that sort of stuff as well? Like, was there?
I didn't think I did. But because I failed math in school.
Yeah.
But I was like, so I got the job in the bank. Amazingly, I had to sell a pen. That's how I got the job.
No way.
Yeah. So.
Get out of town.
No, this was before I saw that movie. So I was at Black Betty Cafe. I was with the regional business manager, good guy Richard, and. Because at that point in time, banks were allowed to sell products, right? And so they were like, well, we need people with some sales ability to prove channels. He's like, I hear you know how to sell. And I was like, yeah, sure. And he's like, okay, sell me this pen. So I sold him the pen. And
what did you say? Do you remember?
I think I started going through, why do you need this pen? And what are you looking for? And this pen, blah, blah, blah. And then, again, trying to find out why they needed it. Got a job in the bank. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, though. Went home that night, bought a book. Still got it. It's called How to Read a Balance Sheet.
Oh, wow.
And taught myself accounting.
Really?
Yeah. So self-taught.
Yeah.
And so then, it took a while. About 9 months of hard work. And then, just 6.5 years later, I did the bank,
So that's extraordinary as well, though, right? Like, I think, my business, I'm the only one with no degree. I failed English, well, not so much English, but definitely maths at school. But I know numbers, right? And I know the numbers that count. I don't know algebra or all that sort of stuff, but I know my business numbers and marketing numbers and stuff. Was that for you one of those things that you just committed to learning as well?
I think it it's one of these things, right? When you're older, you start learning more about yourself. And I think why I didn't do well in school was that I learned things from breaking it and fixing it.
Yes.
That's my kind of mindset. So it's kind of hard when you're in that traditional school setting where it's X equals Y, and it's like, if it's wrong, it's wrong.
Yeah, you weren't allowed to break stuff at school because it's kind of seen as a failure, right? We're in the real world.
You break stuff all the
time, right?
So then when I sort of realised that basically math is just problem solving.
Yeah.
It just, and once I sort of clicked that and you've sort of learned the fundamentals of it, it was like, actually, no, this is pretty straightforward, you know.
Yeah.
Balance sheet has to balance, you know.
And so you've read the book, you've got some real expertise going. Did you start to see that you could sell the products inside the bank too? Like, was that a real opportunity for you?
Yeah, again, it just came back to understanding what it was they were trying to achieve, and then the product had to suit their needs. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. So you were dealing with small to medium sized businesses in the bank?
Yeah. So my first couple of years, I dealt with businesses under $1 million turnover.
Yeah.
So I was in a role where I would get a phone call or a video call from anywhere in the country, and I had to make a split decision whether we were going to do the deal or not.
Oh, really?
Which was hard work. And then if it was outside your authority, you had to put a paper up to credit and all this kind of stuff. That was really tough because you had to learn everything about this person in a 20-minute phone call.
So how did you do that? And how did you learn like that and so quickly? Was it just good questioning?
Good questioning and a lot of Googling. So,
oh, really?
I had 3 screens, and so I'd be on the phone and I would be asking some key questions, and then I would be bringing up their account. I'd be looking through their account transactions. I'd be Googling their business. I'd be everything to try and form a picture in my head of, is this, because the fundamental, and this is one thing that, this is my sales pitch to clients as well, is that I think the banks have forgotten that my mentor taught me, is that we don't fund businesses, we back people in business.
Nice.
And so it was like, you've got the numbers are the numbers, right?
Yeah.
You know, the numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
But it's what's around those numbers.
Yeah.
You know, it's why is it that way happening? Is it because this person actually can't do it? You know, or is it that they haven't got the right product to do it, or they don't have the right people around them, or
nice.
What's the underlying person that we're backing here?
Yeah. So when you were Googling, what were you looking for? Were you looking for
just red flags. So, you know, like if they've been...
Like really bad reviews, or...?
Maybe a little bit of that. Sometimes, Google reviews sometimes would tell you a little bit about the business. I'm always take them with a grain of salt, because it just takes one bad experience to tarnish them. But I'd be looking, you know, at court stuff, right? So, you know, have they been dragged through the courts? And are there any disputes going on? Or is there any, you know, anything nasty happening in there?
Wow. I didn't know that. I didn't know that you looked at that.
Oh, yeah, no, they do. So,
that's interesting.
Yeah, we used to actually have a... I'll probably talk about it, doesn't matter now, but there was an onboarding checklist you had to do when bringing on a new client, and one thing was you had to screenshot Google results.
Wow.
Yeah, so because that went to every new client of a certain level, went to area in the bank that had to get sign-off from a risk, kind of not a credit risk, but from an overall, do they know something, because it's New Zealand, right? Do they know something about this person that we can't find?
Yeah.
Because,
Interesting. And so what sort of money were those sort of businesses looking at to borrow?
Most of those businesses, because it was under $1 million turnover, you're talking a couple $100,000, maybe 50 grand, a lot of 50 grand overdrafts and that kind of thing. So I did that for 4 years, and then I moved into, I did that 2 years, and I moved into a same level of business, but on the road, finding new clients, which is part, I think, at the start of when you met me. And then after that, I moved into medium enterprise with businesses with sort of anywhere from 1 to 20 million turnover, most of them in that 1 to 5 million space. Did
you find like the businesses, they got bigger, they just had better business problems? You know, what was when it comes to funding and that sort of stuff? Or were they the same sort of problems?
Same things, right?
Same things, just at a different level?
I'm dealing with one, even now I'm dealing with one business that's about 25 million turnover, and they're still going, why have we got no money? Yeah. And it's like, because you've got 2.7 million owing to you. That's why.
Yeah. So getting the money in.
So, you know, it's as simple as that. So like it's the same, you know, like it's the exact same model for every business, right? It's the same issues, same cash flow drivers, same day-to-day challenges. It's just different complexities as the business gets bigger, because you've usually got more staff. You've got, you know, like that business I'm talking about, they got like 70-odd staff. So, you know, there's a whole... But then because you've got that size of business, you can delegate that down to an HR person. So, it's actually harder at the small business end, because you're wearing all 10 hats.
You're doing everything, right?
That's it.
So some of those common things that you're finding, obviously, you know... creditors, people, you know, debtors and all that sort of stuff, and also did you deal with, like, as you moved up, obviously, you know, that lower end, you're dealing with the business owner. Were you still dealing with the business owner at those medium to larger? Interesting.
97% of all business in this country is a small to medium.
So, so true.
So really, your top 3% are your Rymans and Air New Zealand's where you're dealing with an institutional level.
Yeah.
You know.
So what were some of the biggest learnings for you? You know, in that banking space when dealing with people there? What were some of the biggest takeaways for you? I like what you and your mentor have just said. You know, you're backing people because that's essentially what you are doing. It's the businesses. People at the end of the day.
Oh, that's it, exactly. Like, would you back, who are you going to back to take you to Mars? Is it going to be Bill Gates or Elon Musk?
Yeah.
Both very good people, good businesses, but who's crazier to be able to do it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing you got to think about, right? Yeah. Learnings, look, lots and lots, but I think the biggest one I learned was that human beings will offload their stress on you.
Okay.
And there is no stress worse than financial stress.
Yes.
And so it's just in their nature. It's this whole flight or fight thing, right? And it's they will get into flight mode or they will get into fight mode even though you're trying to help them. You know? So you've got to be able to learn to not take it personally and realise that this person's just under a bit of stress here and that my job is to actually just first of all help them calm down and then think rationally and then we can work towards a solution. So that was, once I figured that out, my job became a lot easier.
Yeah, because stress is a financial stress is a huge, massive one for a lot of businesses.
Oh, it's what ruins businesses. It ruins marriages. It you know, unfortunately, in some instances, takes people's lives. You know, it's.
Do you think it's just because and like money's not really taught at schools, and a lot of people aren't taught how to use money? Do you think that's a big part of it? Like, because you can make a lot of money, but you can also spend a lot of money. It can go through your hands. I remember one of my first businesses. I looked at it, and then I got this bill, and it said I had to pay this tax and GST bill, and I was like, well, what the hell's that? Like, and years later you learn, and now it's because of those learnings and those hard times that you learn that you've actually got to use the money. You've got to distribute it into certain accounts and let it flow in and out and manage it. And I think that was never taught to me. I had to learn that, one, by reading a book that's over there, and then starting asking some better questions of people.
Yeah, I think it's a hard one, because that's the kind of conversations that are going on all the time. What should we be teaching our kids? I've got 3 kids myself, 2 of them in school, and what are we teaching them? Math wise and this kind of stuff. But I think there should be something around money management, but it is sort of something like you're never going to stop an 18-year-old going to the pub. You're not. It's the problem, right? Is that it's kind of one of those things where you can take the horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And I think it is one of those things where some people are naturally good with their money. And some people, but like from a business perspective, as I say, because it's not as straightforward. When you're on a salary, it's money in, and that's it. You same pay every fortnight. But as you know, when you're a business, it's like, and then all of a sudden, like you say, you get a GST bill, and then you get a provisional tax bill, and you're going
15th of January.
Tax pooling, I recommend it. And then you go, what do I do with it? How do I manage this? And God, how am I? And then you've got to try and grow the business, and then as the business grows, more cash gets tied up, and so that's why a lot of businesses, I think, it just gets too hard. It's a real balancing act, right? It's not, and it's definitely not for everyone. So in the BNZ, you started, and this is one of the things we started talking about. You started doing these LinkedIn locals. Why was that? Why did you start? I guess one thing doing that, because obviously you were on LinkedIn and you started to see some of the things there. Why did you put that all together? So we'll go back to why I went on LinkedIn. So as I said, I did a couple of years on that phone role, and then I all of a sudden got a role where I was on the road having to find new business. And so the bulk of my job became networking. My wife had her first child at that point, and I was not able to be out every night networking.
True.
So it was, how do I, look after my child and network at the same time? And then LinkedIn, I'll talk to the cows come home about how good it is. Because fundamentally, it is the only professional networking site in the world. So any white-collar professional or CEO is on LinkedIn. So all of a sudden, I could network on my phone, on the couch with my newborn asleep on me. So I started so I started building up the LinkedIn stuff, and started following people like Rebecca Hollis, for example, and went to one of his things, and he talked about personal branding and how you can build up your LinkedIn stuff. And then as I progressed through and started getting results off it, and then LinkedIn local thing was kind of this global movement that came about, and it was like, well, that could be a good idea, why not? And so, I pitched it to my boss and said, can I do this? And they said, why? They're like, okay, as long as it doesn't cost us anything, and you don't do anything that's going to give us any professional damage.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so I went out, found my own sponsors, raised the money that was needed to run this event, and we put out a post on LinkedIn, and 300 people turned up.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, it was I think it's the biggest one we've had in Christchurch.
Yeah.
It was one of the biggest ones at the time in the country.
Oh,
and
so good.
It was a good event. It was good fun.
I think because there was a lot of people there too who were on LinkedIn, and they were just curious about, but for a lot of people, it's funny that they've actually never met the person met in person, right?
Yeah.
So this gave the ability to take that online, offline as such, in a real risk-free environment. Definitely. It's funny now, like I'm listening just to some Gary Vee stuff that he's been talking about at the end of this year, and he's really saying how LinkedIn is going to be the place for next year. And I'm like, wow, we've been here for like how long?
Yeah.
But it still amazes me, some clients we meet, they aren't even on Facebook yet, so like it just shows you how, even though some of these platforms are mature, they don't actually have everyone, right?
And it probably depends on your business. So like I went through the whole thing with my company, I set up a Facebook page and I tried Twitter, and LinkedIn by far gets the best results.
Yeah.
And then, I think it depends on, whereas like on LinkedIn, yes, there's company pages, but I don't think they do that well. Whereas like on Facebook, the company pages tend to do all right.
Yeah.
So like you say, I think it depends on the type of business, depends on what platform you go on, like...
The hard part, I think, for LinkedIn, and you probably would experience this, is, you've got to do the work on LinkedIn, right? You can't, you can't just... It's not like other platforms where you can pay to advertise.
No.
Well, you can pay to advertise, but it's clunky and it's expensive. And I think if they ever work that out, that would be
huge,
the game changer.
Oh, if you could promote your because I think
personal brand.
Yeah, the personal brand on it. That I don't know why they haven't done that, because it is just purely you can advertise your company page.
Yeah. Yeah.
No one really does that.
No. And if you could advertise your own personal brand, definitely. And so okay, so LinkedIn local. Was that good for your business though? Like obviously it was good, maybe even for your brand inside the bank.
Yep.
Because obviously more and more people started to see what was going on there, right?
Yeah. So in the bank, I got an award.
So,
we had this thing called Chevron. So I got a Chevron award for my work on LinkedIn, and then I ended up being assigned one of the social media managers in the bank because I started getting too much attention on LinkedIn. And
how did they like that, or was it?
No, they liked it. It was absolutely fine. Yeah. So the social media team loved it because then we put a program together to help other bankers build out with LinkedIn.
Yeah, nice.
And then it started generating business as well. So I was bringing in these new clients through LinkedIn. So definitely.
How good is that?
Yeah, it was good. And then I would literally I remember sitting down with a new client, really good client, still a client today with the bank, and me and my boss sitting down having a coffee with them and Robert Harris. And the first thing he says to me, me and my boss sitting right there, was, I follow your stuff on LinkedIn, I really like it.
Yeah. How good.
Yeah.
There's nothing better, right?
Yeah, and you could just see the light bulb moment in the boss go, oh, I get it.
I get it now. Yeah. Because a lot of that in that corporate space, they weren't doing any of that, right? Like, and the cool part there is, what I always say to people too, like, there's people that there's quality people and quantity people. They're both the same kind of person that you'd want to do business with, but some people have to see a lot of your stuff to make a decision, and some people just need to see one or two things, right? So the quality person sees one or two things, the quantity person needs to see a lot of stuff. But it amazes me, especially on LinkedIn, how many people are watching, how many people won't comment or say anything, and then you'll meet them at an event and they'll go, hey, I really like your videos.
We call them the lurkers.
Yeah, and can we do business together?
Yeah.
And that to me, like, I remember when someone said that to me, I was like, oh wow, you don't actually have to worry about, because a lot of people, especially on like the Instagram and TikTok and Facebook, it's all about the ego, right? And I found what I loved about LinkedIn, you don't have to have that ego and still generate business. You can be putting out content and someone will DM you and go, hey, can we catch up? Never post on anything, never say anything, and generally they are the big hitters too. The people that can't afford to spend money with
I probably get 1 to 3 leads a week on LinkedIn now through, again, personal messaging. So I picked up one of my biggest clients this year from it.
How good. Yeah. So what are some of your tips for marketing on LinkedIn then?
Like you say, it's content based, right? So And, you know, there was this hashtag that was going around saying, you know, keep LinkedIn professional, it's not personal, but at the end of the day, we're all people.
Yeah.
So I always put a bit of, if you've ever followed my posts, I kind of put a little bit, I've started putting a little bit more of a personal spin into it.
Yep.
And the data proves it, that they are get the highest impressions of everything. But I try and always keep it, like, I'm not putting pictures of my bloody cat up there.
No.
Unless it's, you know.
At least it's funny.
Yeah, but even then, you've got to be a bit careful. But it is more kind of, you got to be consistent as well, right? So, you know, I try and do 1 to 2 posts a week.
Yeah.
You know, so I was at one stage doing 1 a day. But, you know, it's just, it got to that stage, though, that I got enough reach and following that by doing 1 or 2 posts a week, it's still getting the results I need, because then I can actually take my time to think about what we're going to talk about that would be interesting, that people would actually like to, you know, engage with.
Yeah.
The latest one I'm going to work on next year, LinkedIn, you'll like this, being the marketing guy, I did not know this until someone pointed it out to me, but the LinkedIn newsletter that you can write for your company page that can be shared on your personal page, if you have followers on LinkedIn, and they subscribe to that, when you release that newsletter, it goes to their email
address. Yeah,
I didn't know that, and so I was like, because I got something like 4,000 or 5,000 followers or something like that, and so I was like, all of a sudden I got a database potentially of 5,000 people.
Yeah.
Whereas I've got my own newsletter I do, which I started doing this year because someone talked me into it.
Yeah,
and again,
some good stuff on it too.
Oh, that's one of the best things I've done this year. Every single month it generates business. Yeah. And it's free.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, good.
And then, but it's, you know, it's a quality one, right? So I only have about 1,000 people on that one, right? Because there's a chunk of that newsletter that is, you know, professionals that I deal with, some clients that I deal with, and then a big investor database that I deal with, and like vetted investors that, you know, actually are active and actually have the means to invest, and, you know, not a waste of time. Because you see all these adverts out there in my industry, you know, like we got 35,000 people on our database. Well, you know, what do you do? You know, I'd rather have 1,000 good people, you know.
I always say, like, you know, this struck me when I was on LinkedIn, like the depth of, and this is something I also learned from going to LinkedIn Local, the depth of connection is better than the width of connection, right? And you're right, I'd rather have 1,000 people on my database that I have a kind of a depth of relationship with than having 35 and no one knowing me, you know, or no real connection, right? What's the point, right? It just costs you money, and you're never going to generate money from it.
One of the best stories I've seen, and it's a person in Auckland, and she is a wealth advisor for one of the big wealth management firms. And the way her story goes is that her and her friends were drinking wine one night, and they dared her to reach out to Warren Buffett. Lo and behold, she ended up having a phone call with him.
Oh, wow.
So through LinkedIn, you know, how many people can say they've had a phone call with Warren Buffett? You know, that's cool. Yeah, that's pretty cool. In little old New Zealand.
And I think that's the coolest thing I like about LinkedIn too, is you can reach people, right? Yeah. I call it the warm call. You know, it's like the warm cold call. You know, you can actually get in front of people. The best thing about it is you can add value to them first. You can comment on their posts. You can comment on, have an opinion on some of the things that they're talking about. All of a sudden, you get in front of them and they see that you've got an opinion, and then they check you out, and then all of a sudden, hey, should we catch up for coffee? And I really like that, because you couldn't do that before, right?
And like you said, LinkedIn will actually show you who's looked at your profile. Which is very powerful, because you can all of a sudden get a gauge of why has someone clicked on my profile from something that I posted. And like, you know, for my ones, you know, the CEOs, they're whoever it might be. I like looking at that data too. You know, who are the people that are actually looking at your content, so you can then tailor some of the content that's coming out. Hey, you know, top 5 investing tips for CEOs in 2024. You know, like that kind of stuff. That's cool. So obviously, you know, continuing to post on LinkedIn today and keeping up that consistency. I think consistency is key. I always say to people, if you're not going to be consistent with your marketing, don't start. Like, you better not to do anything, right? Like, just. Oh, I learned that this year. I tried the whole paid marketing thing on Facebook ads, and didn't work for me. But I wasn't consistent either. So maybe I didn't give it long enough. Maybe I was doing the wrong median. I don't know, but. It's like you say, if you don't, it's never going to, you can't just do it once. No. I always say consistency, message plus frequency reach to create relevancy. Relevancy is the hard part, because it's the part you have to wait for because of quality and quantity. So you know, but also some platforms perform better for some industries. So that's a skill as well, to know what platform, you know, is going to be there. And always building up your newsletter. Hey, so interesting stuff. So you finished.
You're working with the bank, you've grown LinkedIn Linkle, you've won an award, things are looking good. Why then leave? And like, did you not see that the ladder to keep climbing, or did you always want to start your own thing?
In the corporate world, doesn't matter which industry, you can either go up the ladder or you can go sideways and specialise.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go up the ladder, because to go up the ladder would go into people management, and that's never interested me. I've never wanted to. I enjoy the thrill of the chase too much.
Nice.
So you could go into specialisation. Reason I left was I got approached by another business to be offered to come in as a shareholder with a match my salary, and so it's a case of, well, this is an opportunity to go self-employed. With little downside. So I'll, if I'm at the time I was still in my how old was I? I can't remember. I think it was still in my 20s. So I was like, let's do this. Convinced my wife. She was pregnant with her third child. That was a good idea. So we did it. And then, that's how that happened. But then within 6 months of that, doing that work, I realised that the business I was working with, I didn't like that industry. So it was in an accounting industry, and I realised that not for me. Selling GST returns, it's selling annual accounts. Does not interest me whatsoever. But then what came out of that was that my old clients came back to me, and I kept getting, as always, I was getting referred new clients. And they all has had this underlying need of, we want to do something, but it's outside the box. Can you help us get the funding?
Oh, wow.
Can you help us find? And then it moved into, do you know any investors? And so it sort of made me look at the industry and market and go, okay, why does this gap exist? Why am I constantly, every day, getting asked by people, can you help me find this? Can you do this? And I realised that there was a huge gap in the market between VC and PE. And so
just maybe explain a wee bit about that for people. We deal a lot here, or listeners here, a lot of small to medium-sized business owners. So they'd love to know a bit more about this.
So there's two ways to grow a business with capital: debt and equity. Right, simple as that. VC, venture capital, is their business model is invest into high growth businesses. So let's put. But you got to be careful, because you're putting rocket fuel on a car. So you got to make sure that you can actually navigate and steer that. And the business model is, we invest in 10 companies, a couple will fail, some will do all right, and then one of them will be I hate this term, but the unicorn. And that's where they make their return for businesses. So there's that side of the market, which is relatively well looked after. And then you go right down this end of the spectrum to private equity. And private equity is your established business owners. Might be turning over 50 mil or whatever it might be, sometimes less, it all depends, and they're typically getting checks of anywhere from 10 million, 20 million, 50 million, and it's kind of that they'll either do through mergers and acquisitions, which is kind of like those big company roll-ups, or the private equity firm will come in, help them grow even bigger towards public listing. So there's that side of the market, but again, there was this huge gap in between. So these businesses kind of needing a couple of million in funding. And traditionally the only place that could do that would be debt funding, which was predominantly the banks. But banks lend on cash flow. So for businesses that were unprofitable or for whatever reason, and then the banks timed up, there was a whole bunch of stuff, COVID hit, and there was a mess, right? So there was this massive gap in the market, and so with that it's like, well, there must be an opportunity. And so I studied corporate finance at night with my newborn daughter on me, taught myself all that I needed to know around stocks and bonds and valuing companies and everything like that. And so then went out of the market and started building up a database, and hence Newbrook was born. And
so what were you looking to offer? What was your pitch to that gap in the market?
It's taken me a long time to figure that out, because I was kind of figuring it out as I go along, but the underlying thing was you needed money. And then I realised I started getting brought on for consulting and expertise on how to structure transactions as well.
Nice.
And so then I realised actually my business wasn't just brokering, it was around transactions. And so it's taken me 5 years, but I finally figured out what Newbrook is. And Newbrook is complex transactions made easy.
Nice.
So a company will come to me because they're either needing cash to grow, or they've had a hiccup. So I had a few of those come through COVID, obviously, where we had some restructure stuff, get some money back into the business. Or it just might be something that's actually really bloody complicated that they need someone to be able to manage it. So,
So question there is, so a business looking to grow, or because you've got two scenarios, a business looking to grow, when should they contact you? Like, when is the sweet spot for them getting involved in your world?
Oh, I'm happy to chat to anyone at any stage.
Yep.
Typically, businesses I deal with have got at least $1 million turnover.
Yep.
Just because of I've still got to make a living as well.
Yeah.
So, how my business model works is we charge consulting fee and then a success fee. And because of the quantum of what you need to bring in, I typically start raising money from 500k plus.
Yep.
So the businesses that need like 50k, probably I used to do that.
Yeah.
I just don't have the capacity anymore. I'm still happy to pass them on, and I've got some people I deal with that I'm happy to handshake them over to.
So a business looking to grow, they've done some projections and they're going, hey, okay, now we want to get some funding. We want to get some decent funding.
So if I look at the transactions I've done this year, a lot of them have been, we want to buy that business.
Okay.
So either because we've got an existing business and we think that's a really good fit.
Yeah.
How do we do that? So then I'll help manage that whole process. To help and then raise the funding needed to buy that business.
Yep.
Or it might be we've got a good business, but we're in a little bit of financial difficulty here.
Yep.
Can you help us understand why and fix it?
Cool.
So I do that. I've got to be careful with those ones because there's a lot of reputational, personal brand risk that comes with that if I cock it up. And so I'm very careful of that. Or it might be more of a equity type one, right? So like we actually want to find some private investors to come into our company and help it grow.
Yep.
And so that's the other side.
Nice.
Yeah. And again, I have to be very selective with which ones I take on because that is by far the hardest thing to do because that's a 6 to 12 month process.
Yeah.
To find investors,
And to find the right investors, right?
To find the right investors, and I've seen lots of horror stories of not having the right investor.
Yeah. I've seen businesses that get the wrong investors and nice people, but the business wanted to grow and the investors didn't understand the market.
Yeah.
So they pulled the handbrake back. Yeah. And then another competitor came in with the right investors and let the handbrake off.
That's it.
And market share just went.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I say, if you go down the VC road, be very careful because a VC's job is to put rocket fuel in a car.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. Can you handle that?
Yeah.
Because it is rapid, fast growth, and because they're coming in early, you're giving up big chunks of your company, so you don't have control.
Yeah.
So you got to be very careful. Whereas, like you say, if you're bringing in, like I syndicate a lot of investors. So what I do there is I'll take a couple of littler investors that go, we're keen, but I'm not wanting to put in 500k.
Yep.
I'll put in 50 grand or 100 grand.
Yep.
And you syndicate it under what we call an SPV, special purpose vehicle, which is just a shell company basically. And we invest it that way. And so that way it's good because...
And does that investor have any, they've handed that money to you? Do they have any say in where that money gets invested? Or is
there's always a plan. And that's why I'm saying it takes 6 to 12 months. They don't just give me a check. I have to, we go out for dinner with the client and they really do their own due diligence and they do a deep dive. I've done a lot of the pre-work, obviously. Yeah. And I'm very, very selective of which investor because every investor's got their own kind of flavour of what they want to do as well.
Do you think your ability to make the complex simple comes from you haven't had to go through the university and all that sort of stuff where they maybe have just taught you a certain way of doing stuff? You've actually learnt from the real world and then you've educated yourself and then learnt from the real world again? Is that...
Yeah, I'd say so. That's why I'm actually teaching at the university in the new year. So I'm running an executive course called Raising Capital in New Zealand. Yep. Because, again, I've done all these, I've read the books, I've done the papers, I've done accounting papers, and it's all theory, right? Yeah. I actually started my MBA because I thought, right, I'll get an MBA because I don't have a degree. I've always had that imposter syndrome. Yeah. So I'll get an MBA. I got accepted. I started the MBA. 2 weeks into the MBA, I was like, why am I doing this? Yeah. And I was like, I'm not climbing the corporate ladder. I can exactly see why you would want it if you want to climb the corporate ladder. Yeah. But I don't. And it's or otherwise it can set you up to start a business, but we've already got a business. So I was like, why am I spending all this money and time, because time is the biggest currency, away from my family, away from my business, to get something that the only reason I'm getting it is because I'm actually feeling insecure about myself. Yeah, true. So what better than to teach? Yeah. So okay, good. What a great realization, because I think a lot of people do have imposter syndrome, it's even in my business, right? I don't feel it on a daily, but when you start employing people, and they all have degrees, and some of them have big degrees, right? And I'm like, wow,
And then, but then, you know, some of them also, I know how the real world works, and some of them really struggle with the real world as well, you know. Yeah. So it's an interesting one. So you decided to can that? Like you just...
I did, canned it. I was just like, nah, sorry, it's a good course. I recommend it. If that's what you want to do, absolutely go and do it. And the University of Canterbury's got an excellent course for it.
Yeah.
But I just realised actually it was that classic, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
You know, and it was that actually I'm just actually insecure.
Yeah.
Because I've gone from here to here very quickly.
Yeah.
But then it was kind of, then when I did that realisation, well, it was me that got me there.
Yeah.
It's not as if I've been spoon-fed or walked into that role. I've actually had to go through the trenches and the hard knocks to get there.
What a great realisation when you start, hey, actually, you know what, I'm doing okay here. You know, I probably should back myself. Because you would have got to doing the piece of paper, and you would have a piece of paper, and we're still being pretty much
exactly
but not as much money in your pocket. So when you look at so what are some of the pitfalls you see when businesses, you know, wanting to invest money? You know, we talked about getting the wrong investors and stuff. What are some of the dangers that you've seen over the years? And then I really want to jump into some of the things that a business can do doing well, and then maybe some of the things they could look into 2024. This podcast here, this episode here will come out in February, so it'd be cool to give some business owners some things for that.
Yeah, so I guess, look, if you're going down so a business will go to a bank or an investor and they'll have a business plan and a forecast, right? We used to have a saying in the bank, I've never seen a bad forecast.
It's so true.
It's true. No one ever forecasts badly.
Yeah, no one's going to say, oh.
No, but the reality is they not very often hit plan, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes they go above it. That's great. I've seen that a couple of times in my career, but the majority of them fall short because it's hard.
Yeah.
And it's not because business is hard and it doesn't go to plan. And you've got to pivot and you've got to be resilient and you've got to adapt.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, is that, you know, you can write these fancy business plans and I can build you a fancy financial model. That's absolutely fine, but really where you're going to focus down is the fundamentals. And I'll use a quote that my father-in-law taught me, because he's been self-employed his whole life. It's that a business is a bucket with a hole in it.
Yeah.
It's true, because it's like that is the fundamental things you need. You need clients and you need cash flow.
Yeah.
You know, it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
So you can do all the fancy, Yahoo and retreats and business awards, all that stuff's great, but fundamentally it's just that you've got to be able to deal with the stress.
Yeah, and I think also, you know, and one thing I've learned over the years, it takes more money and more time.
Oh, yeah.
Always. And you can say, oh no, I'm going to be different this time.
Yeah.
And you have every plan to be different.
Yeah.
But more time, more money, because things happen all the time. Things beyond your control start to happen, you know. And
happened to me this year.
Yeah.
So like one of my big strategies this year was to set up our own VC fund.
Yep.
And so, you know, did all the work, got it all ready to go. And then we got the feedback from the market that there's too many funds in New Zealand, and we may as well just go with existing funds.
Yeah, okay.
And so it was okay. Well, I could walk away from all this work and money that we spent getting it to this point, or we can adapt and pivot. And so we did. And so I won't go into details; it's a bit technical. But now we pivoted. Instead of it being a managed fund that, you know, money goes in and we distribute it as required. We've set it up in a way that you can do these individual syndicated investments. And so, we've done SpaceX this year.
Yeah, that's cool.
We just finished another investment into one of our clients that should settle on Friday. We've done, oh goodness, what else have we done? We've done a small private debt fund, and then we've got a couple of interesting ones set up in the new year for like social housing and stuff. So that same work that I paid all that money for and put all that time and energy into could have been scrapped because it didn't work. It's like, well, okay, how do you take the bones of it and rebuild it? And so that's what I learned this year.
I think that's the skill, though, of a kind of entrepreneurial business mindset. Okay, well, hey, we've been told this, that's okay. Well, how do we move that and make, you know, how do we fill that hole, that bucket, you know, and plug it? Because obviously something else will come up, but you've plugged that and you've moved. And that's quite exciting, right? Being able to that's one thing I do love about business. You have this idea, and then all of a sudden, because you can't do something, another idea comes out, and all of a sudden you're doing a SpaceX. You know, how cool is that, right?
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah.
So you know, have you got a team that you're working with that's helping you do this sort of stuff now? Or?
No. So I've done that. I've had teams. I've pivoted. I've gone wide with different contractors, and then I've just brought it back to myself.
Nice.
It was just, again, looking back at the core fundamentals, and it was just that didn't make sense. And ultimately, as I say, it was like, why didn't I go up the ladder in the bank?
Yeah.
And not that it's not in my nature to manage people. I just don't like it.
No, yeah. So what do you do then to keep your mind sharp? And you've got your busy life, you've got a family, kids, wife, etc. What do you do to keep your mind sharp? Is there anything that you do on a daily basis, or you're reading, or you're listening? What are you doing?
Oh, that's a good question.
Do you read books?
Yeah. I set myself. I try to. I'm 3 kids. It's a very busy life, but I set a goal of reading 10 books this year.
Yep.
And so I think I've got one more to go, which my wife bought me one for my birthday, so I'm going to read that over Christmas.
Yep.
I think.
What's your favourite book so far?
This year?
Yeah.
I really like Dan Carter's one, The Art of Winning.
Yeah, that's good.
That was a really good book. Yeah. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And I read another one. What was it? The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F.
Oh yes.
That was quite good as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've got a few other ones that there was another one I read as well that was around which I had to do when I was doing the MBA, and it was around design theory and thinking creatively.
Oh, nice.
Because I'm not that kind of person.
Yeah.
I don't think like that. So that was quite good to put me outside my comfort zone.
I really believe in. I've got a book to read at Christmas time, and my wife's like, "Why are you reading that?" And I was like, "Well, because I learned early on you should never just read the easy stuff.
Mm.
You shouldn't just read what's in your comfort zone. Dan Carter, Right in My Comfort Zone. That type of stuff. It's a book that challenges you and gives you ideas, but is it too much that you're just enjoying that reading? So read stuff that's not always just easy for you to read, and I think that's a really good thing. So like that creative book would have challenged you to read it. And I always remember, I've got a great tip, is when you're reading a book, make sure you complete the chapter, and then put the book down. If you're finding it hard to get through, read that chapter and then reward yourself, because you can then start at the...
Yeah.
And it helps me, you get through those books.
There's another book as well I read this year called Make Your Bed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a short book, but straight to the point. Yeah, it's a great one.
Yeah, nice. Make Your Bed.
Yeah, it's a story of... you have to read it, but basically it's a US Navy SEAL.
I think I've heard him do a speech.
Yeah.
And from that speech, my mum...
He wrote that book.
Oh, did he? My wife makes my son make his bed every day.
Yeah.
And he does.
Yep. You don't achieve anything else in the day, you've achieved one thing.
You've made your bed.
Yeah.
So you're reading books, and obviously that, from a busy period of time.
I think also, like, my wife's very good at making me realise that life's not all about work. And so, like, come the weekend, there is no work.
Nice.
It's time with the kids.
Awesome.
And, like, I've got young family, so, I've got a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 4.5-year-old.
Primo.
So, life is... And, like, we've just bought a small lifestyle block, so we've got a hectare of land now, so we've got a lot of... Well, it takes me 3 hours to mow the bloody lawns, which is actually great, because I put my headphones on and I listen to music for 3 hours.
And then you've got 3 lawn mowing kids coming through the ranks as well.
Yeah, my oldest is already helping me with that. I do the tricky bits, he does the big bit. And then
that's awesome.
And it's good, like last night me and my 2 youngest kids were out, and unfortunately we found a dead bird in the trees in its nest, so we buried it.
Yeah.
So teaching
them a bit. That's cool.
Yeah, so that stuff is, very much keeps you down to earth and real.
I think that's awesome that your wife's realised that too for you, because you are a business guy, right? And your tendency to have your brain always on, probably like mine, right? So you do need that time where you just, hey, you know what? Park that. So do you have an office? Do you work at home? How do you manage?
I work at home. So work at home, and then I travel a lot. So,
so how do you manage the work at home with kids and family?
Oh, trust me, the kids don't let you work.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. So you time it so that you work at home when the kids are at school or at preschool, and my wife's at work as well. So you've got the house yourself, so it's quiet. And then, and like, for example, today my kids are at home because of school holidays, so I'm in town doing my town meetings.
Nice.
So you kind of get into that rhythm.
Yeah.
Because it's when you've got 3 young children, it's very hard to work from home.
Yeah. I remember when I'd sold a business and I was just doing nothing at home, and then started to build this business at home again, and my son, he'd come and knock on the door, and he was only like 1, but it was really, and you kind of realise that you do have to have that separation.
It's like you can, and I think people are a lot easier these days. Like I was on a Zoom call this last week with China, of all places. I was speaking to an investment office based out of China, and my daughter barged in and was sitting on my lap and like face up to the camera, having a look. But the person on the other end in China was just laughing. They were like, "Oh, what a cute daughter."
Yeah.
So I think the whole COVID thing has really changed that perception of we actually do have lives.
Yeah, it's not just about business, right? That's cool. Hey, so this has been a fascinating conversation. It's gone very, very fast. What are some of the opportunities you see for businesses in 2024 when it comes to your game?
So I think there's still a lot happening in the business buy and sell space.
Yep.
Especially again, 97% of all businesses are an SME business. Yep. You've got a lot of owners that are wanting to exit.
Yep. And purely age-driven exits? Or?
Age-driven. Some of them are tired. But a lot of them are age-driven. Some of them health issues.
Yep.
I've come across a couple of those this year. So there's a huge opportunity there for either someone wanting to buy an existing business, or the majority of people I have is they've already got one, and they want to go, because you've got two ways to grow, right? You can invest capital to grow by marketing and bringing on new clients, or you can do it faster by buying an existing business.
Acquisition.
Yeah, so there's a lot of that happening at the moment, and the banks have come back into that market. So I've done about 4 deals this year for the banks that have been funded against the business, no property.
Yep.
Just
wow.
Yeah, cash flow based lending against the balance sheet. I'm very big on not using the family home.
Yeah.
New Zealand is obsessed with it.
Yeah.
That's great when we're in a low interest rate environment with rising asset prices. But if you're linking your business's success to the equity in your home,
it's dangerous.
Well, you can't grow your enterprise value because you can't get the funding. No. So that's a big opportunity.
And hey, just interestingly, why do you think they're coming back into that market now? Because
just allocation of capital. And just the world, the banks made a ton of money out of the housing market. Yeah. Because again, low interest rates. Yeah. High asset prices and people just buying up a storm. And the way that the banking sector kind of works is that they hold, I can't remember exact numbers, but let's just high level it. So for every $86 cents, they can lend out $1 for a house, for example. So they've got leverage. Yeah. But for business, it's like $1.05 to $1. So you're making higher margin on a lower risk asset. Yeah. And so then when you've got rising house prices, which means bigger loans, you've got scale, right? And so that's why you're getting $billion profits. Or you can lend that same money over here to the business, which is higher risk. And costing you more because you've got to hold more capital aside. So it's a pure commercial decision. Now the market's kind of changing. And then, and it's important that banks do lend to businesses because, that 97% I talked about drives 28% of our economy. Yeah, totally. So, it's actually, investors should look at businesses because it's businesses that generate wealth. It's businesses that generate jobs. You invest in property, yes, you can get a capital gain because typically, if you invest it, obviously, depending on the type of property, especially at the moment, your rental yield is lower than your interest rate. So you're always going to sort of be a little bit backwards there. So you're relying on capital gain. But if you invest in a business, that business is directly going back into the economy. Yeah. So as a business owner, it's an interesting time. Like the tide's probably come back to you a bit more as an option for getting some funding. What obviously people should probably have a good conversation about that first, right? And get some really good intel. What are some of the 5 things a business should do when they are, from your experience, when they're looking to say they're looking to do an acquisition? What are some of the things they should? What are 5 things? For an acquisition? No, just for maybe getting some funding. For getting some funding. So look, first of all, cash flow pays loans, not profit. Yep. So profit means cash flow typically. Yep. So that's one thing, is understanding that side of it. Your ducks in a row. Yep. You're going to be asked a lot of questions about your business. Yep. So Xero and MYOB and all those software programs make it a lot easier these days. Because I'm talking about stuff where who are your top 5 clients? Yeah. And you go, okay, and what's that percentage to revenue? Because that becomes what we call concentration risk. Yeah. Cool. A lot of businesses are going, fuck, I haven't a clue. Yeah. Actually, this is good. Yeah, you go into Xero, you can figure it out. Yeah. Because I was doing it yesterday for someone. I exported all their transactions for the year. Simple filter, if statements, blah blah blah, and it's like, cool, right? They've spent $2 million with you this year. Yeah, nice. This client here, it's only and so that concentration risk becomes a big thing because it makes sense, doesn't it? If you've got 80% out to just one client, that client are you a giver or are you a taker? That whole supply demand market. So understanding that business. What would be the next thing is be prepared to go through a rocky road with it because no acquisition will go smoothly because you're trying to merge two different businesses together. You're going to have some overlap of staff. You're probably going to have to let some people go or redistribute them into other areas. So you've got to think about that side of it. Engage an accountant to do the thorough DD on the financial side of things, like GST return, like simple things of making sure that the GST returns match what the accounts are saying, for example, and making sure there's nothing going to come out the woodwork.
Do you see a little bit of that getting fudged? Like in some industries?
Not on purpose, but there is sometimes double counting. So especially when you've got, like, I've seen it 2 or 3 times this year where you've got, they've got a couple of entities and one sells to the other entity, and so all of a sudden, we had one, they're like, oh, the revenue is, 12 million. Actually, the revenue was 7 million. Yeah. Because this entity was selling to this entity, and so it was double counting. But the GST return showed us that, because when we added up the GST returns, it was 7 million. So it made us think, that doesn't make sense. Yeah. Why is there a discrepancy there? Yeah. And so it was perfectly legal accounting wise. Yep. But it wasn't reality. So we had to sort of look at that, and then I guess the final thing would be, if you're buying another business, it's treated like any other investment, right? So why are you doing it? Like, what's the return here, right? Is it going to generate additional cash flow, or are you building this up to then sell it again? Yeah. So that's kind of, always start with the exit. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I getting this out? Is it because I want to dump straight away a couple of $100,000 into the bottom line, with little work because it's got the clients that I need and we've got the systems in place that it'll just be straight profit? Or is this a strategic move that we can get a bit of their IP that we can use to then grow our business, and then, okay, well, how do you get that return on investment then? Because it's not generating cash flow. Is it going to increase your sales over here, or is it going to make it more attractive for your business to then be sold? Yeah. So just thinking that through. That's kind of 5 years ahead of why am I doing this? What do I want to get out of this, and am I prepared to put the bloody work in? Yeah. Yeah, and that's an honest conversation, right? One thing I'd add to your 5 there, which I thought they were really good. Obviously cash flow at the start, and would you say cash flow is cash pays loans, not profit? Yeah,
cash pays loans. That's a great one. Yeah. Ducks in a row. I think just knowing, just knowing who your top clients are, why they're your top clients, and all that stuff. So when you get those tough questions, you can have that prepared, and being prepared, engaging the right professionals. So
it's going to cost you, but it's like insurance. You just need them to work once.
Yeah, yeah. And also, why are you buying the business? I think, or why are you doing what you're doing? Like, really get clear on that, and knowing it's worth the work, or it's not worth the work.
Yeah, that's right.
One thing I'd add to it, and it's what you talked about at the start, is make sure you have a story. Yeah. Yeah. Like, make sure you have a story that you can sell what you're doing. So at the end of the day, if you're going to get money, you're going to have to sell someone on giving you the money. Yeah. Because people buy from they're buying from the business, and they're buying from the person, not the business, right? So
that's it, and the difference in the type of money. So if you're going for debt, again, it's that cash pays profit. You're paying back a fixed return, right? Yeah. So they're assessing the risk of you being able to repay it. Yeah. When you're bringing on an investor, they need a financial return from a liquidity event. And so that liquidity event is a sale or a listing or a buyback or some form of mechanism that investor can get their money out and a good return. Yeah. Depending on the level of risk. Like VC, for example, we use a term called internal rate of return. So you might have heard the term 10x. VCs want 10 times their money back. You think about it, that's actually hard to do.
Yeah.
Totally. The later down the business scale it goes, the lower that number has to be. Yeah. Because obviously the perceived risk. Yeah. And you're dealing with bigger checks. But if you're at this small to medium end, and investors are wanting a 5 to 10 times return on their money, you go, well, how the hell am I going to do that? What does that? What, you just do the math and go, well, what would I have to sell the business for? Yeah. And how much time and energy is going to take to make that happen? Yeah. And is it worth it?
Is it worth it?
Am I going to get enough out at the end as well?
Yeah, and that's. Sometimes you to do all that, you need someone who's an expert to look at what you're doing and giving you an opinion. So this is where I'd say, hey, if you are looking at any of this sort of stuff, or you maybe you see it in your future, how do people get hold of you and contact you? What's LinkedIn. The best way? LinkedIn?
LinkedIn. So I don't have business cards. Yeah. I've got a contact me page on my website. I get maybe 1 or 2 hits, maybe 1 hit a month on that. But overall, the bulk of my contacts come through LinkedIn directly.
Outstanding. So here's the thing: if you've watched this, listened to this, and you've started to see even some of the shorts come up in your newsfeed, start checking Dave out. Start going and maybe have a conversation with him. But obviously, be respectful of his time. He's a busy man. But we'll put all the details and extra to LinkedIn, so people can get hold of you. This has been a real fascinating
Dave
conversation.
Armstrong NZ.
Yes, Dave Armstrong NZ, and we'll have a link to that. This has been a fascinating conversation. I've actually learned a lot myself, and it's really cool to see you from where you were, running the LinkedIn Locals, being involved in the bank, now running your own business. I think you've made a great move, and you're very passionate about, who you help and how you help them.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, because again, you're backing people, right? So it's no different to working in the bank. I'm backing these people. So
nice. Hey, have you got any one last thing you want to say before we close this off?
I just remember to take time off. I haven't had any time off this year, and I'm absolutely spent because of it. So that's my one thing to do next year, is make sure it's booked in the calendar, and I'm doing it because you don't have annual leave when you're self-employed, but God, you need it because you got to plan your calendar first. Yeah. All right, guys. Hey, appreciate your time. Thanks for watching. Hey, once again, this podcast, all you need to do, all I just want you to do is share it. Okay, you just need to share it with your business colleagues, anyone who might be needing a little bit of funding or actually understand the world of finance when it comes to business. Just share this podcast. Really appreciate you being here, and look forward to helping you grow your business in 2024.